Is Kano back in Blitz? It kind of feels like Kano's back in Blitz. Hi friends, welcome back to Nearly Sane Games. I'm Neil, and today we're talking about Oscilio in Blitz. Now if you haven't yet, please subscribe. We're trying to get to that 1K very slowly. So Oscilio in Blitz is, I've seen some Oscilio decks go around, and they've been doing this crazy, I play instants, I drop things and bring them back and put them down again and do these crazy combo turns. That's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for old school wizard style attacks. So I'm looking for Storm Striders and doing these big attacks with, oh, Stir the Aetherwinds is no longer banned in Blitz. And neither is Forked Lightning, so we can do stupid things. Oh, and Storm Striders isn't banned in Blitz, so kind of sounds like a Kano deck. Talking about a little bit of lightning attacks with some go again, and a lot of arcane damage to throw at our opponents. Let's take a look at the deck tech. Okay, so let's have a look at this deck. We're going to start off with the hero. We're going to start off with Oscilio, who has an ability once per turn instant, discard an instant card, draw a card. We're not going to use that ability too much. It's not that important for our deck, but it can be useful in certain situations. This is an Essence of Lightning Elemental Wizard hero. So we're going to be doing a lot of wizard things. He comes in, starts with 18 life. I don't think that's going to be a problem for us. So we're going to take a look and see how we're going to build him out. So let's start off with the weapon I was using. First off, his signature weapon is Volsar the Lightning Rod. And this allows us allows us to amp a bunch if we're playing a bunch of lightning cards. But we're not. We're playing wizard stuff. So we're not going to use this. Instead, we're going to be using Waning Moon. And Waning Moon says once per turn instant. The instant's very important for us. Pay 2, deal 2 arcane damage to target hero. If it's not your turn, instead deal 3 arcane damage to them. Activate this only if you've played a non-attack action card this turn. That's important. We'll have to pay attention to that as we're playing our matches. Now, for the equipment, there's nothing other than the Storm Striders. This has an ability, once per turn, or instant, pay 1, destroy Storm Striders. You may play your next wizard non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant. This card is crazy good, and this allows us to kill our opponents on their turn, which Oscilio doesn't like to do so well, but we still have this card, and this still gives us the ability to do that. It also has Arcane Barrier 2, which is nice, and we probably won't use that much, but if we run into a wizard match, that's important. We really only want to pop this on the kill turn. So player presents usually lethal damage for us. In response, we're going to pop Storm Striders, and we're going to send a bunch of arcane damage, hopefully that they cannot block. Now, for the chest piece, I'm running Fendel's Spring Tunic. This, after at the start of each turn, we put a counter on it, and once we have 3 counters on it, we stop putting counters on it, and we can instantly remove 3 counters and gain a resource. And it also has a block of 1, which is important to us. Now, playing Blitz, it turns out that some matches are very quick and are over very quick, and maybe we're not going to get a whole lot of use out of this. In the sideboard, I am running Spellfire Cloak. This allows us to gain a resource only on an opponent's turn and doesn't have a block. In the games I played with this, I generally got 1 tunic counter out of this, or one use out of the tunic, but then also having the one block, I was happy to have that too, and happy to throw it after I've used my one resource, happy to block with it. But Spellflyer Cloak, if we're in a faster match, can also be important. We can pop this on our opponent's turn and use Stormstriders and have that pay for that. Now, Kano players will also be curious about the Threadbare Tunic. I switched to this in my Kano builds, and it's just more relevant in Kano. I don't think Oscilio really wants this. You can gain one resource at instant speed if you have no cards in hand, which is good. It allows you to use it on your turn if you need to, and get the one resource when you need it. But I don't think it's quite as good for Oscilio. Also, as we have the Wizard Pajamas for Wizard mirrors. You can also use this in a Runeblade mirror, and if you've the first time you use this for Arcane Barrier, each turn you get a counter on it, and you can remove 2 counters and activate a staff ability, which is useful for the Waning Moon. But I would only probably bring it in for Wizard mirrors. I do like having the one block on the Spring Tunic. Now, for the headpiece, I'm running Crown of Providence. Block 2, and you can, when you defend with it, you can sink a card from your hand and draw a new card. It's real nice to smooth out the hands that you have. There's a possibility, if you can manage to hold this on to late game, you could potentially block with this and maybe turn a red into a blue when you need it. But the block 2 is really what I was looking for here. The ability is would be fine if you wanted to use Skullcap. I think the block 2 is nice. Skullcap can block 3. Arcane Barrier probably not relevant, but I think either one of these, but for right now I'm running Crown of Providence. In the Wizard matchup, I'll switch that out to a Null Rune Hood, just more Arcane Barrier. I do respect Wizards and run a whole lot of Arcane Barrier. Now for the hands, we have this new card, Hold Focus, which will allow you to destroy it and amp 1. Amp 1 will make your next arcane damage deal 1 more. And this is nice. Now notice this is an action and not an instant. So you can only use this on your turn. You can't use it on your opponent's turn, which makes it less useful. Keep that in mind. You'll need to pay attention to this and make sure that you use it at the right time. Now, if you're going into a Runeblade matchup, I like to have a little bit of Arcane Barrier. Metacarpus Node allows us to pump up arcane spells. It costs us 1 to do that, but that's okay. The Arcane Barrier, and then we'll destroy it at the end of the turn. So be careful with that. You don't want to have this be your only piece of Arcane Barrier and then you spend it. But if you're going for a kill turn, then you can use your the pump ability. But I use this for Arcane Barrier for my Runeblade matchups. Now, if we have a real tough matchup that likes to go wide, likes to buff up things, if you're running against Bolton, I use the Stonewall Gauntlet, blocks 1, and if it defends an attack with power greater than its base power, opposing attacks get -1 this combat chain. So this can block multiple points of damage, especially if you're fighting against Bolton, they're doing a Via the Vanguard turn, or something wacky like that. You can really reduce the attacks. Not as important. I think you could probably get by with any of the other ones. So now we go on to the deck, and we're going to start with the reds. And so this build is running a bit of a Battle Mage build. We're going to have some regular attacks, some lightning attacks, and then we're going to incorporate our arcane damage. And we're going to start with our regular attacks with Enlightened Strike. And this just does so many things. This is a little bit of expensive to play because you have to put a card from your hand at the bottom of the deck. So it could be a red, it could be a blue, but it has a lot of versatility, and we use pretty much all of it. Most of the time, I'll put a card on the bottom of my deck and choose the go again. So I can send over some physical damage. 5 physical damage is a great number to have for a cost of 0. And having that go again allows us to throw some arcane at him. But this also has the potential to do +2. So if you only have this and another card, you could send over 7 points of damage, and that is relevant. The draw of the card is not necessarily not relevant for us either. There's situations that you may want to send over an Enlightened Strike and still have an arsenal available to you. So you can choose the draw card option and send over 5 damage. All around an excellent card, especially for this deck. Next we have Scar for a Scar. Here's a 0 for 4, and if you have less health than an opposing hero, it gains go again. We're a wizard, so we tend to have less health. We start with less health. You can play this on your first turn and still have it have the go again. This is great for us. Allows us to throw an attack and have go again, so we can send over some arcane damage as well. Speaking about go again, we have Lightning Surge. This is a 0 cost, 4 damage attack, blocks for 2, which isn't so great, but if it's played from Arsenal, it gains go again. So this takes a turn to set up, and we will often set it up. There's question on whether or not we should be running Fry, and I know a lot of decks are running Fry, but it has 0 block on Fry. This has a 2 block, and I would prefer to have the 2 block available to us. So there's a lot of times we can set that up, but I have used that as a block. Next we have Give and Take. Give and Take costs 1, which is kind of a problem for me. I don't like that so much. I like all of our attacks to have 0 cost. It gives us more flexibility, which I'll talk about again. Almost all of our arcane costs some amount of resource, so I'm considering taking this out and replacing it maybe with Fry. I like that this blocks 3 though, so we'll see. But it can make for some awkward hands. But this has go again, and if it's defended by an action card, you can put a card with cost less than Give and Take, which almost all of our cards is going to have less than that, and put it back on top of your deck. So I've used this to put a blue back on top of the deck. You can use this to put an Enlightened Strike back on top of the deck, which is excellent. But this has a lot of versatility. For now, we're going to keep it with the go again. And ending off our go again, we have Ravenous Rabble. Now this one has power less than the top card of your deck, the pitch value. And to be honest with you, I'm probably going to cut this. As a matter of fact, I am going to cut this. This blocks 2, which isn't great for us. And this deck, from my playthroughs with this, it's running a little bit too many reds and not enough blues. So I'm taking this card out. I have thrown it for 4, and that's nice. 4 go again. But there's a potential that it's going to be 2 with go again, which is less good. The block 2 is not so good. So we're going to take these out, and I'm specifically going to replace those with Scour. These are blue cards, and they cost X, and they block 3 though. A blue block 3 is nice, and it says destroy X target aura tokens and or auras with cost 0 controlled by target hero, then deal arcane damage to that hero equal to the number of auras destroyed this way. Now, previously, this had been, well, this is really nice against Prism. They bring out their auras, you destroy some auras. That's not what I'm looking for this for. I mean, Prism is important too, but We also just got a new set of Rune Blades, and Rune Blades have Rune Chants. Rune Chants are a token aura, which we can destroy. But we also have a lot of heroes that have other tokens that we could destroy. We could destroy Seismic Surges, Quickens, Agilities, Might tokens, and Vigor tokens. All of these can be destroyed. Now, I look at Scour and I say, one cost for one arcane damage is not the best rate, but you can't consider it that way. You have to consider it, I'm getting rid of these things and throwing arcane damage. They're doing dual purpose, and in that way, this card is very good for us. And there are several matches that this will be relevant. And when they're not relevant, block 3, blue pitch, those things are relevant to us. So I like this card, especially in this meta, and I think that's what's going to take the place going further. Now, those are our physical attacks. And now we get into our wizarding things. And I'm going to start with Stir the Aetherwinds. This card has been banned before. But they said, well, Kano's out of the meta, Icelander's out of the meta, we can bring it back. That's a bad decision for LSS. This says, you may play your next wizard non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant. And if it has an effect that... Now, hold on a second. Let's talk about that effect for a minute. With Stormstriders. I pop Stormstriders, I can play Stir the Aetherwinds, and my next wizard attack is an instant. So I can still play it on my turn, on my opponent's turn. That is very important for us, and pretty gross. They send us lethal damage, and hey, Stir the Aetherwinds. And the second part of this says that if it has an effect that deals arcane damage, instead, that effect deals that much arcane damage plus 3. Now, the wording on this is very important, because you look at this and cost 2, and you look at something like Exploding Aether, which says amp 3, and the next arcane damage that you would do gets that much plus 3. Pretty similar, except this one makes your next action an instant, which means it can work on your opponent's turn. This one has Go Again, which works on your turn, which is good, but is not as good as this. Secondly, we need to talk about how this card works. When you have an ability that deals arcane damage on a card, it adds that plus 3 to each ability on that card. And this is important for things like Forked Lightning was the classic one that would use. So this says deal 2 arcane damage to target hero, deal 2 arcane damage to target hero. Now with Stir the Aetherwinds, it says anytime it says arcane damage, add 3 to that. So instead, Forked Lightning says deal 5 arcane damage to target hero, deal 5 arcane damage to target hero. That is a big difference than our amp card, which would say deal 5 arcane damage to target hero, deal 2 arcane damage to target hero. That difference is very important, and we'll get back to that later. But this allows us to do some stupid things. It's good on our turn, and it's really good on our opponent's turn. So that's going to be, we're going to make sure that we have those in our deck to do stupid things. And you can have, if you're running something like Sergeant Aethertide, if you notice the wording on this says deal 1 arcane damage to opposing hero, and then the first action you played each turn with an arcane damage effect instead deals that much arcane damage plus X, where X is the damage dealt by Sergeant Aethertide this turn. So this can turn amp into this format of talking about a card. This will increase the damage done, but we're not so interested in Surgent Aethertide. It's kind of a setup, and it can do dumb things, but this is a once per turn action with Go Again, and this gives our next card, lets us play it at instant speed. So Stir the Aetherwinds is going to be our go-to for our pumping spells. So next section of cards I'm going to talk about are going to be called what I call the Scalding Rain cards. And Scalding Rain was a 1 cost that deals 4 arcane damage and blocks for 3. It's pretty good. But we have new cards that are better, or at least have potential upside. First is Eternal Inferno. This is a 1 cost, deal 4 arcane damage to any target, which allows us to snipe dragons or anything else if that's important to us. Also has a block 3. And if it deals more than 4 arcane damage, you can banish it and play it again this turn. I don't know that anybody's going to let this hit, but here's a 1 for 4 with potential upside. If you can buff it by even 1, then you're going to ensure that your opponent's going to have to block it. So we're running 2 of those. All right, next up on our Scalding Rain train, we've got Photon Splicing. Again, a cost 1, deal 4 arcane damage and block 3. This one has an ability that you can discard this and amp 1. It's nice to have the availability of that, and you can push more damage, especially depending on how much Arcane Barrier your opponent is running. If they're running a lot of Arcane Barrier, maybe pumping it up by 1 can get you over the top a little bit. Or maybe you can amp up another card that has an important on-hit effect or a surge effect that you want to get over and make sure that they block for. So you can discard that and get that extra point of damage over for your surge effect. Finally, in our Scalding Rain list, we have Aether Quickening, another 1 for 4 with the surge. If this deals more than 4 damage, it gets Go Again, which that's a pretty big effect. And we can potentially throw another piece of arcane damage, or maybe we have another one of these attack action cards, although we usually start with those attack action cards. But giving this Go Again would be pretty good. And depending on their arcane barrier, maybe you stir the Aetherwinds into Aether Quickening. Now you're dealing 7. And if more than 4 of that hits, then you get Go Again and you can do something else. Depends on what you're looking for, but again, all these cards together cost, with Stir the Aetherwinds, cost 3. So I can do 7 points of arcane damage on my turn with 1 blue. And that is good value in Blitz. When life totals are low, we can pop over and present a lot of arcane damage. And potentially use any of these as our finishers. 7 arcane damage when a person has no cards in hand because they've sent it all at your face. It's pretty good, and I do like it. And it feels kind of Kano-like. All right. Talking about finishing the game, we've got Emeritus Scalding, which on your opponent's turn, if you play this, it deals 6 arcane damage. On your turn, it only deals 4. Costs 2, so that's a little bit more, but still blocks 3. I do like to arsenal one of these and keep it around as my finisher. Storm Striders into Emeritus Scalding. Here's 6 damage. Enjoy that. And when you're towards the end of the game, there's a lot of heroes that just can't take that much damage. So very good game ender. I like to have it. Speaking about game enders and things that pair well with Stir the Aetherwinds. We have this new split card, Comet Storm and Shock. Now, each side of these costs 2, but this still blocks for 3 for some reason. I don't know why. And one side is an instant, and one side is a wizard action. So if you play Comet Storm, you have to have an action point available to you. But Stir the Aetherwinds, if you meld these two together, or if you play just the Comet Storm side, will still allow you to play it as an instant. So pretty gross. And you can play both sides of these for 4. So if we play Stir the Aetherwinds for 2, we play Comet Storm and Shock for 4, that's 2 blues. If we do this on our turn, we can send over 12 points of damage. So we get 5 arcane damage plus the 3, which is 8, and then 1 arcane damage plus the 3 again, which is 4. So that's coming over for 12 points of arcane damage. This is disgusting. I feel a little bit bad playing this, but it's super powerful and I need to play it. It's really, really good. And even if you're only playing the Comet Storm side, for 2, 2 for 5 is a pretty good rate. And if you include this, then that could be a 2 for 8. Still really good and happy to do that. And now we'll have to go to our one-ofs. And we do have 1 Forked Lightning in here. Again, we generally want to save this for a Stir the Aetherwinds turn so that we can present 10 points of arcane damage. This is from one source. So your arcane barrier prevents damage from a source. And even though these are split, this is still one source. So if you have 2 arcane barrier, you can pitch 2 and you can block 2 of this 10 damage that's coming at you. And that's it. And that's a lot of damage. I'm happy to set this up and try to get these out on my turn. But if I can do this on a Stormstrider's turn, this Forked Lightning costs 3. So it's not as flexible as Comet Storm Shock. We can do, if we have the extra resources, we can do this. But this is a little bit more stringent, but still very effective. A lot of arcane damage coming at our opponent. This card was also banned, mostly because Stir the Aetherwinds was so good with it. And they said, oh, this is unfair. We can't have this with all of our wizards. And yeah, then Kano and Icelander LL'd and Blitz, and they said, oh, these are fine again. And enjoy this pair because this is going away. These Stir the Aetherwinds will be banned again. But until then, we're going to rack up a ton of points with our wizards. All right. And we also have 1 Lightning Press. This is 0 cost and puts 3 damage on any of our attacks, pushing in 3 physical damage from a deck that's not expected to necessarily throw a whole lot of physical damage is great. Especially if we send over a Lightning Surge or something small and they say, oh, no blocks. And you say, +3. It's really great. The downside is this does not block. But it turns out our hero ability lets us discard this and draw a new card in a pinch. Now, I tried to make as many cards as I could block for 3 because we're a wizard. We're a little bit frail and we need it. So you could potentially switch this out once per turn if you need it. Also note that since Shock is an instant, this card is considered an instant, and I can discard it to Oscilio's ability to get a new card. Perhaps I need a blue to finally finish off my opponent, and that's an ability that we can do that. All right, next up we have our only yellows in the deck, and those are 2 Mind Warps. Now these cost 2, and these only do 2 arcane damage, which isn't great, but they are a yellow, so they're a pretty good pitch. And they do block 3, which is also important to us. And the surge ability is very important to us as well, because it says if this deals more than 2 damage to a hero, they shuffle their hand into their deck and they draw that many cards -1. So again, if we manage to use, I like this with Hold Focus. Here, let me pop this, amp this by 1, let me threaten 3 damage. You have to block this. You have to take a card out of your hand to either pay for Arcane Barrier, or you have to pay for, or you'll get rid of your hand and get a new one. So either way, I'm happy with that trade-off. This makes bad decisions. It also blocks for 3, so if we need to, we can block with it. All right, now we're on to our blues. We'll start off with blue Emeritus Scalding. Even in blue, still good. 2 for 4 as a blue on our opponent's turn. I'm still happy to use this as a finisher. I did Arsenal this, and I wasn't real happy about that Arsenal. I immediately drew reds and wish I had blues in hand. So maybe not Arsenal this, but in a pinch, it's 4 damage that you can send to your opponent on their turn. Or just 2 on your turn. Or it's a blue and it blocks. Then we have Voltic Bolt. Voltic Bolt is one of the best, one of the biggest amounts of arcane that we can send in blue. And it's just 3 arcane damage, and it does cost us 2. This is pretty high cost. This is usually just pitch. I'm going to pitch a blue, and or I'm going to block for 3. But all of these things are good. If you end up with an all blue hand, this is an okay thing. Here's 3 damage. Figure out what you're going to do with that. And then we get back to our Scalding Rains. These are 1 for 2 in blue, and I do run the blue Scalding Rains. Still an okay amount of damage for only 1 cost, and all the 0 costs will deal 1 arcane damage. I would prefer to do at least 2 to threaten something. And then we move on to our blue Photon Splicing. Again, we can discard to amp 1. This is great if you end up with an all blue hand. Discard this, maybe pump up Scalding Rain, maybe pump up Voltic Bolt. Now you're doing 4 arcane damage, and that's not nothing. So, but also blue blocks for 3. And also Aether Quickening. Blue blocks for 3. If it deals more than 2 damage, it gets go again, which is dangerous. Your opponent can't let that happen. So if you can pump this up, they will have to block that. Now, it's important to note that most of these are 1 cost arcane spells. And that's great because Waning Moon costs 2. So be sure to remember that. What I like to do is to throw these 0 cost attacks. That's one of the reasons I don't like Give and Take so much, is because it costs 1. But if I throw one of these 0 cost attacks, I can pitch a blue and send over, hopefully, 4 arcane damage and have 2 resources floating to drop another 2 from Waning Moon. Also, don't forget about Waning Moon on your opponent's turn. So when you do have your Stormstrider's turn, you can pop your Stormstriders, send over an Emeritus Scalding for 6, and then potentially Waning Moon for another 3 because you've played that attack action this turn. A lot of arcane damage, and a lot of people don't know how to block that very well. We do also have a few more blues. We have Sap. Here's a 0 with 1 arcane damage, and it has an ability that you can remove an energy counter. Probably not relevant. This is probably just a blue pitch, but maybe there's a world where 1 arcane damage is important. Same thing with Trailblazing Aether. If this deals 1 or more damage, it gets go again, which which is fine, but yeah, just another blue for us, another block 3. Those are probably interchangeable for other ones. In our sideboard, the cards we have in our sideboard are just 2 Oasis Respite. These are important in the Wizard mirrors. We respect Wizard even if other people do not. So I would be happy to do just a generic instant. And yeah, and that is the deck. And like I said, it worked pretty well for me, and I was very happy with the results. And Stars the Aether Winds, man. That is a card. And yeah, it feels like playing Kano again in Blitz. So how did we do with this deck? Well, I took it to an event at my local game store and went 3-0 and wasn't really in a whole lot of danger at any point. I don't even think I was presented a lethal attack with return damage. The ability to pop the boots, play Stir the Aether Winds, and follow up, even Stir the Aether Winds, flat up from just my turn into one of those powerhouse cards. You're talking 8, 9, 10, maybe even 12 damage, arcane damage that you're sending over to your opponent. And when your opponent starts at 20 life, that's a big deal. You add on top of that the attacks that we're doing with Go Again and piling on Arcane on top of that, and it just makes this really hard deck to fight against. And the games were quick because we're killing them very, very quickly. I managed to take some damage, do some blocking. The deck blocks very well because we're running a lot of 3 blocks. And people don't they don't respect the wizards. And I had one person that was on Arcane Barrier 3, and I think the other 2 might have been on Arcane Barrier 2. And that leaves you with a lot of damage that you're able to present. And you can switch things out. You can say, well, I'm going to use these attacks as pitch and just push arcane damage because I know that's getting over the edge. And again, still taking the blocks where necessary. And I don't think that the deck is at its final form yet. I think it still has some tweaks that could be done. I think having more blues is important. There were especially Stir the Aether Wind turns that I really wanted to have more blue available to me so I could pump up those attacks and play the big attacks, play both sides of the Comet Storm card, and make sure that I get those Waning Moon attacks in afterwards as well. There's a lot of arcane damage that you can push, and it's very effective. And I think Stir the Aether Winds will be banned again. I think that these once skirmish season starts, I think wizards are back in a big way, and they're going to be a problem for people that aren't ready for them, and they're going to take a lot of points. And if they don't ban Stir the Aether Winds, I think that we're going to watch these new wizards LL very quickly. So until next time, I'm Neil. You've been watching Nearly Sane Games.